This is the world's most miserable guy. His foot slips on the sand, and he's sliding straight for the cliff. Below, there's nothing but solid rock. So, he's gripping onto the sand for dear life, but there's no force point. He's still sliding, halfway down the mountain, in a real tight spot. Out of desperation, he pulls the face plant. He's using his face and forehead to stop himself, spreading out the force, but nobody wants to eat sand, right? So, he looks up, hoping for a rescue or something, but no one's up there, just a lonely surfboard. And guess what? This whole thing is based on a true story. Let's see how he gets out of this one. Now, he starts sliding again. He's shouting like crazy. A fall from this height spells game over, but just before he hits the bottom, he pulls the faceplant once more and comes to a stop. In this tight moment, his phone starts ringing. Seriously, who's calling the cell phone at this hour? This poor guy just can't catch a break. His feet slip, and he's heading straight for the cliff, and just when it matters most, his phone starts ringing. Alright, time to call for backup. He reaches for his phone with his right hand, but before he can even grab it, he's sliding down again. He stops for a good 3 minutes. Then, he decides to go for a faceplant to free up his left hand, but the phone's on the other side of the bag. Trying to snag it with his left hand is like trying to catch a greased pig, and before he's got it, he starts sliding again. The slope's too steep for the faceplant. What now? Just as he's about to reach the end of the cliff, holy cow. He stops right on the edge of the cliff. Turns out there's a little ledge he can just about stand on under the cliff. In that position, he's too scared to move an inch. He hangs tough for a whole hour, but the strain's taking its toll. At this rate, he's gonna end up flat as a pancake. This dude, Chrome Dome Chuck, used to tear up the waves like a boss. Drove alone to this uninhabited region. It was supposed to be a break, but now, he's found himself in a real tight spot. At the base of the cliff, the waves are crashing against the rocks like a drumbeat. The spray's towering over him, and Chrome Dome Chuck's grip is slipping fast. Looking down, he's got this crazy idea. There are only two choices here. Take the fall or take the fall with wave beats. Chuck starts crunching the numbers, trying to sync up with those waves. He knows the 9th wave's the biggest. If I can hit that 9th wave, he thinks, maybe I'll have a shot at making it out alive. Chuck keeps muttering to himself. He's gonna count to 8 and jump, because it takes about a second to fall, so he can fall on the 9th wave. Without a second thought, he leaps off the edge. Chrome Dome Chuck lets go. Chrome Dome Chuck is stuck on the edge of a 98-foot cliff. Things are about to take a turn for the worse. He lets go in a desperate bid to ride the big 9th wave. But Lady Luck ain't on his side. Turns out, the 9th wave never showed. He plunges into the water. Chrome Dome Chuck's calculations were off. At this height, it's a half-second drop to the sea. The free fall packs a wallop. Despite hitting the water first, Chuck's waist and legs still meet the reef below. Enduring the pain, Chuck swims to the surface. The bone-chilling water keeps him in the dark about his injuries for a bit. He struggles to climb onto the nearest rock. At that moment, he's just glad to be alive. But what happens next down there makes Chrome Dome Chuck wish he'd just stayed down. After about 10 minutes, he sits up, only to find his palm slashed. Chuck gets to his feet, aiming to take a couple of steps. Suddenly, his lower limbs give out with a click. Chuck hits the ground, the agony knocking him out cold. The man falls off a cliff, pushes through the pain, and swims to the reef. A sharp pain shoots through his rear end. Chrome Dome Chuck lifts his clothes and looks. The pelvis should be broken. He wiggles his toes. Turns out they can still move. That means the lumbar spine is not broken. Chrome Dome Chuck starts digging through his bag. Gets his phone out of there, but the phone is already flooded. The screen cracks, too. Chuck is desperate. He should have cut down more trees. It would be nice to buy a waterproof phone. There's nothing in the bag to use, except for that dang book, The Power of Now. Real helpful at a time like this. What should he do now? Chrome Dome Chuck against the cliff, screams for help, but this is no man's land. There's no people, no ghosts. The sound is long drowned out by the waves. Chuck begins to regret. Why did he come to this place? Lies on the rocks and cries. Chuck takes off his clothes, bandages his injured hand. Too tired, Chuck drifts into sleep. The man takes a tumble off a cliff, and gets knocked out cold by the fall. When he finally comes to, he spots a plane up in the sky. He scrambles to his feet and checks out the scene. Oh man, the tide's rising fast. If he doesn't haul himself out of here, he's toast. He grabs his backpack and then takes the plunge into the water, makes a break for the shore, but his feet are dead weight, dragging him down. He's gotta paddle like crazy with his arms. Yet, after just a few yards, Chrome Dome Chuck is exhausted. He sinks into the waves. Is he really going to die? Just when he's about to give up, his sweetheart shows up. He's already hallucinating. They'd had a spat, which led him to this solo trip. In his hallucination, they make up, and suddenly he's standing on his own 2 feet again. His girl grabs her surfboard and heads out into the sea. With a smile, he calls out her name. and she looks back, flashing him encouragement. She's telling him to fight for survival. Never go surfing solo. Chrome Dome Chuck takes a tumble off a cliff, sinking deeper and deeper, spewing deathly bubbles. But just when he's about to give up, his girlfriend pops up, giving him a glimmer of hope. Chuck's feet finally hit the ground, bouncing back. He puts every ounce of strength into it, vigorously sliding his arms. It's a Herculean effort, but he finally breaks the surface, gasping for air. Crawling to shore, he catches his breath. But how the heck is he gonna get rescued? Chuck scribbles SOS in the sand, hoping for a miracle. But he knows deep down, this is a no man's land. Who's gonna come to his rescue out here? Trapped for a grueling 24 hours, Chuck wakes up again at the dawn, only to find his wound festering from the seawater. Flies buzzing around, ready to feast on his decaying flesh. Just then, half a surfboard washes ashore, like a beacon of hope. Chuck scrambles toward it, but another monstrous wave crashes, dragging him and the board into the heart of the ocean. Chrome Dome Chuck takes a nasty spill off the cliff, dragging his beaten body. He ain't finding no fresh water for grub, let alone a rescue party. After a struggle, he manages to hoist himself onto his surfboard, only to be engulfed by a monstrous wave. Chuck's in deep trouble now, scrambling to grab hold of the rocks, but they're as slick as ice, and he can't get a grip. Quickly, he ditches his backpack, throwing the straps over the rock, and clutching onto it for dear life. Just then, a chopper flies overhead. Chuck shouts for help, but out in the big ol' ocean, humans look like ants in a sugar jar. The chopper just keeps on flying, not even bothering to glance back, as wave after wave crashes down on him. Chuck swallows a bellyful of seawater, and blacks out once more. When the water finally recedes, a seagull swoops in, perching on the rock, and pecking at Chuck's festering wounds. The pain jolts him back to consciousness, and he shoos away the pesky bird. Now Chuck spots something on the distant shore, a beverage can gleaming in the sunlight. He crawls over eagerly, only to find it filled with nothing but seawater. Disappointed, he hurls it away, but not before a rusty fishhook snags his arm. Piercing through flesh, gritting his teeth, Chuck yanks it out, and struggles back to the safety of the rocks for some much-needed rest. A man takes a tumble off the cliff, his pelvis fractured, not a scrap of food or fresh water in sight. Desperate for survival, Chrome Dome Chuck gets resourceful. He digs into his backpack, and pulls out some tinfoil. After digging a hole in the sand, he puts tinfoil in there, preparing to collect his own urine to stay alive. But with internal injuries, he's already peeing blood. Looks like he's on borrowed time. In the depths of despair, a lightning bolt slashes across the sky. A colossal dark cloud rolls in, signaling the impending rain. Chuck's excitement hits the roof. He hastily sets up his collection jar, laying out the tinfoil like a pro. Finally, a droplet of rain lands on his parched skin. He tilts his head back, mouth wide open, waiting for the heavens to pour down. Little did he know, the big man upstairs had other plans. He sneezes and bolts, leaving Chuck high and dry, with just a few measly drops in the jar. He laps up every last drop from the can and foil, enduring a rough night of torment. Chrome Dome Chuck stranded on the beach, 2 days and 2 nights, severely injured, without a drop of water or a crumb of food. The seagulls started gnawing at his decaying flesh, but the sharp pain woke him up. Chuck grabs a stick nearby to drive them away, but those pesky seagulls aren't backing down. They just perch on the rocks nearby, eyeing Chuck, patiently waiting for him to kick the bucket, so they can feast again. "Wanna munch on me? Not that simple. Who's chowing down on who ain't set in stone?" Chuck quips, his stomach growling like a caged beast. He clenches the stick tightly, then shuts his eyes, playing possum. As the seagulls inch closer, Chuck grips the stick tightly, its other end adorned with sharp nails. He's gotta make this count. Close enough now. Chuck swings the stick at the seagulls, but he's just too darn slow. Misses the mark. Chuck yells out frustration.
¡Cómete tus putos peces! ¡La mierda que comas! ¡Sigo vivo!
Just then, the phone rings. Chuck scrambles to find it, digging it out of the sand. On the screen, he sees his long-lost parents. The guy takes a nosedive off the cliff, lands with nothing to eat or drink, and his legs go on strike. Even seagulls are pecking away at his decaying flesh. In Chuck's darkest hour, he reaches out to his nearest and dearest, yelling for help on the other end of the screen.
Papá, he tenido un accidente, necesito ayuda. Me muero de sed.
But all he gets is silence. What gives? Turns out, it's just a video in Chuck's phone gallery, not a live call. As the clip wraps up, his phone stops working for good, leaving him to rue not treating his folks and lover right. Chuck lies there, scanning the horizon, the SOS on the beach fading with the tide. But thoughts of his loved ones ignite a fire in his belly. Determined to seize the day, Chuck sets his sights on a surfboard bobbing in the distance. Without skipping a beat, he fights through the pain, dragging his battered body toward the board. Come hell or high water, he ain't throwing in the towel this time. This is the most miserable surfer in history. He takes a tumble off a cliff, ending up half paralyzed. Chrome Dome Chuck decides to hitch a ride on a surfboard to get out of here. Finally, he grabs hold of the surfboard, but the waves are gnarly, and he's worried about slipping off. So, he ties a rope around his wrist, and gives it a good old push with both hands. Flops his body onto the board, using the surfboard as his makeshift boat, and his arms as oars. Chuck clings to his only hope, and drifts into the heart of the ocean. After who knows how long, Chuck's totally wiped out, passed out on the board. A huge wave hits, forcing him under, and his wrist rope slips off. He sinks toward the ocean floor, but then, out of the blue, a massive shadow appears on the surface. It's a lifeboat. They spot the surfboard and dive in, scooping up Chuck just in the nick of time. Another minute, and he'd be fish food. Soon enough, a rescue chopper swoops in, and Chuck is finally saved. Chrome Dome Chuck's been stuck on that beach for a solid 2 days and nights, just drifting out in the open sea, clinging to his surfboard for dear life, and just when he's about to hit rock bottom, he finally gets rescued. Fast forward 2 days, and Chuck wakes up in a cozy hospital bed, the sting of surgery lingering, but surrounded by a sense of security. His buddy spills the beans. Turns out, the diver who saved him is his girlfriend, but she's gone now. Chuck's hit with a wave of regret, hiding his face as he lets the tears flow. But right at that moment, his girlfriend walks through the door, there to pay him a visit. After that whole ordeal, Chuck's ready to hit the reset button on his life. Back at the beach, next to him stood a man. This man is the prototype for this incident, Alvaro Biscayello. That's a wrap. Based on a true story, this film, Solo, is a must-watch. The question of the day: if you found yourself stranded in the wilderness, how long could you hold out? Simple 2 days and nights? Please drop 111. Or are you gonna tough it out until rescue? Please drop 222. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content. Catch you in the next one. Bye.